So what exactly is on the table when we're talking about Murray Watt's current kind of negotiations with the coalition?
Well, wouldn't that be good to know, Ebony? So unfortunately, we don't really know. The minister has said that he's consulted widely, but he's been very particular in even the environment groups that he's had consultations with. A lot of people haven't had time to look at what the minister's putting forward, what the details of that are. We know that we need better national environmental standards. We know that they want an EPA that's independent and that can be the tough cop on the beat. But what are those national environmental standards? We know that he wants to leave a climate trigger out, but what are the areas that he actually wants to cover? And I think leaving the climate trigger out is very telling in what the government doesn't want to tackle. And I would suggest that leaving a climate trigger out means that they don't want to have things, high emitting projects like new coal mines or new gas, to be captured under the EPBC.
Yeah, and I want to stick with that for a little bit because it's been one of the key things that I guess the environment movement has been seeking for a long time, along with fixing things like the exemption for logging that happens under regional forest agreements. I mean, climate change just is one of the biggest issues facing the environment.
Yeah.
How much sense does it make that we would reform these laws and again leave out climate change?
I know. I'll tell you an interesting little data point. Because we don't capture high emitting projects under the EPBC Act, so we don't have to assess high emitting projects. So if you just go back and think about the 9 things that will trigger an assessment to be required, it just means that we actually have more renewable energy projects being assessed under the EPBC Act than we do coal mines or gas fields.
So at the moment, it captures more renewable projects than fossil fuel projects.
Correct.
For their impact on the environment.
For their impact on the environment. That's right.
Okay. So it's ass backwards.
It is ass backwards. That's it's ass
There's
backwards.
There's no other way to say it.
Another interesting thing is that, and this is the thing that's so frustrating about the politics of around, and also to me shows the power of the fossil fuel lobby, because people have been trying to get a climate trigger or have emissions assessed under our environmental legislation since 2000. So Robert Hill originally had what we would now refer to as a climate trigger.
Yep.
In 2000, I think it was 2005, the then opposition environment minister Anthony Albanese tried to introduce an act to Parliament which is the equivalent of now a climate trigger. I think it was the Dangerous Climate Change Act. And then, of course, in 2020, the Greens wanted to as well. So this is something that when anybody doesn't hold the levers of power, so are not influenced by the fossil fuel industry, see this as essential to any good environment legislation. And I think one thing we have to mention here is that under the Samuels review, he actually didn't think that a climate trigger should be put in the EPBC because he felt there were other mechanisms and other laws that could deal with emissions reduction targets and the impact. I would disagree. I think what that brings up for me is the problem with having climate and nature dealt with as separate things.
Yeah,
they are they are synergistic. They are
They're inextricably linked.
They are inextricably linked. You can't pull them apart, and we all kind of know that emissions are rising anyway. So we're not doing a good job in either portfolio, and having the climate change minister responsible for some things and having the environment minister responsible for others, I just think it's a recipe for disaster.
So the previous environment minister, Tony Plibersek, had all but secured a deal with the crossbench, with the Greens specifically, only to have it scrapped by the Prime Minister. Now they're negotiating with the coalition. I mean, what does that tell us overall about the government's priorities?
Oh, well, I think there's 2 things to note there. One is that I think the Prime Minister, we all saw the Prime Minister gut the current environment laws last year
Just
when
before the
just
election.
before the election. Sorry, yeah,
This year.
God, was it? Sorry, and that was clearly done because the current Environmental Protection Act was, there was a threat that it might actually be used and work to save a World Heritage Area and an endangered little skate in Tasmania. So what does that tell us? It tells us that when it comes to a crunch point, if you've got to protect the environment or the interests from the extractive industries, this government, our Prime Minister, will line up with the extractive industries at the expense of the environment. I don't think we could get it any clearer than that. So if you fast forward to how they're negotiating now, I think the worrying thing for me is that Minister Watt always presents himself, or has created this myth about himself that the media also repeats, that he is Mr. Fix-It. But the question is, what is he going to fix? Is he going to fix retail politics? No one will remember him and the environment will suffer. Or will he actually try and fix the environment? The environment will be happy and people will probably remember Murray Watt outside of just this term. Going to deal with the coalition makes me think he's going to take the former rather than the latter. He's going to take the very small, narrow, let's fix it now view. Why do I think that? Well, if you look at the LNP, they're not champions for the environment. They're certainly not champions on climate change. And you've got Andrew Hastie and Matt Canavan, at least, arguing that we shouldn't even have a net zero target, like we shouldn't have a net zero policy. So why would you choose to negotiate with a party that has that type of thinking around the environment when it's completely open to you to negotiate with the Greens, who have a good record on coming up with good policy to secure to secure our environment?
Yeah.
And I think the problem for so even if we want to have the minister to look forward in retail politics terms just to the next election, if he goes down the route of sacrificing the environment for short-term retail politics and does a bad deal with the LNP, I think it's really going to bite him in the arse at the next election because people want this fixed. It's why we elected a centre-left government. It's why we have a crossbench full of Greens and climate-friendly independents. So
because that's what Australians have voted in for two
Australia,
elections.
Exactly. So they are going to have a reckoning with this in terms of politics, and no matter what happens with the politics, we're heading for a massive reckoning in terms of the environment that we live in. And it's not just, oh dear, we've lost the koalas. I mean, it's impossible to think that koalas are now a threatened species. It's insane.
Yeah.
But even if you're not interested in that, all of the work that the Australia Institute's done in the past couple of months, think about how the environment and climate change is affecting your insurance policies. It's a great line, I think, from Richard, don't believe in climate change, your insurer certainly does.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. Doesn't matter what deal that they do with the coalition, that is not going to change.
Yeah. The actual ironclad impacts of climate are already here with us.
Exactly. Well, we kind of already baked them in.
Yeah.
And we all saw the climate disaster risk report that was released just before the emissions reduction targets, or the sliding scale, or whatever they're referring to them as.
Compounding, cascading impacts of climate, I believe the risk assessment talked about.
Ebony, that's if we stop doing things like expanding fossil fuels today. That is baked in.
Yeah. So basically, just to summarise, you're not really holding out hope that environment laws passed with the blessing of Matt Canavan are going to really fix the problem. Is that a good summary?
If Matt Canavan thinks they're good laws, I reckon the koalas should be nervous.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to keep up to date with all our latest research and work, sign up to our newsletter. Delivered every fortnight, it includes behind-the-scenes updates from Richard Dennis, an exclusive cartoon from Judy Horacek, details for our upcoming events and webinars, as well as explainers, graphs, and not to mention the latest cutting-edge research and analysis from the team here on the key issues that are facing Australia. Click the button on your screen to check it out.